How's it, everybody, and welcome to a very special video. Today, we are revealing a ton of never-before-seen cards from Magic's new set, Lorwyn Eclipsed. I'm your host, Josh Lee Kwai from the Command Zone and Game Nights, and I'm joined with this awesome group around this round table. We are going to dig into the mechanics and strategies that really make this set tick, and we got some bomb rares to show off, especially near the end, so make sure you stick around. Before we get started, let's hear some introductions from our prestigious panelists.
My name's Kenji Egashira, probably better known as NumotTheNummy online. I draft a ton. I probably do 100 to 200 drafts of any given format, so limited's my forte, and I'm hoping to see some cool cards.
I am Jadine Klomparens. I am an ex-professional player turned Magic designer. I am the play design lead, which means I'm responsible for all the final numbers and do a lot of the nitty-gritty text work.
So we get to blame you if something is too good for limited?
I accept all blame, and I also accept all praise if you are feeling generous.
My name is Reid. I'm in the Magic Hall of Fame. I'm a member of the professional team TCG player and a really big fan of Lorwyn.
That's it? That's the whole intro?
Something more you're looking for?
I think 1 Pro Tour win, 8 top finishes, 6 Grand Prix victories.
That's right.
He was selling himself short. I just had to fix that. All right.
Hi, everybody. I'm Maria Bartholdi. I'm the host of Good Luck High Five, the Magic podcast, as well as Commander Arcade, the YouTube channel. And I also host a Pro Tour. And I don't believe in counter spells.
How dare you? All right. Now, Lorwyn, the original, came out almost 20 years ago.
Wow.
It's one of the most beloved settings in all of Magic's history, and it was the first set ever to introduce Planeswalkers. So we thought it'd be fitting if we started off this video with a preview of a brand new mythic rare Planeswalker. It is Ajani Outland Chaperone.
Ajani Outland Chaperone is a 3-mana Planeswalker that enters with 3 loyalty. He can make 1/1 Kithkin tokens, remove an opponent's tapped creature, or cheat out a ton of permanents from your library for free with his powerful ultimate.
Wow.
And Ajani was one of the original 5, Ajani Goldmane.
This Ajani is sweet because he has 2 different ways to protect himself, both with his +1 and his -2.
Yeah, at only 3 mana, it's going to come down early and start affecting the board immediately.
Imagine you have 1 creature, Ajani comes down, destroys it, and then by the time you start trying to rebuild, they're already making tokens using the plus ability. It could be really hard to deal with Ajani in combat.
I love this ultimate as well. If you're playing a life gain deck, you can just pretty much dump your entire deck onto the table if it's cheap enough.
Top 20 or 40 of your library isn't enough for you. You
Yeah,
need to
I
go
want the
further.
whole thing out
You
there,
gotta be in a
Jadine.
life game deck, yeah. All right, well, let's move on here to talking about the mechanics from the set. There's a lot of really cool callbacks and homages to the original Lorwyn Shadowmoor block. One that I'm really excited about is -1/-1 counters, and this is a rare theme. We don't see design play around in this space very often, so I think there's gonna be a lot of people excited to get more support for decks that they've already got. Let's check out Soul Immolation.
Soul Immolation is an asymmetrical board wipe that can deal huge amounts of damage to your opponents and all their creatures, at the cost of blighting one of your own.
Oh, all right.
Nice.
Jadine, do you want to explain what Blight is?
Yeah, so Blight is a cost you pay. You'll most often see it on cards as an instruction. They will ask you to blight a number, or with Soul Immolation here, blight X. So to blight, let's say 2, you will choose a creature you control and put 2 -1/-1 counters on it. So the toughness of your creatures ends up being really important because it's how many -1/-1 counters they can hold. So that's something to watch out for as we're looking through the cards here.
Yeah, and if you have high enough toughness here, this could be a one-sided board wipe.
Can you overblight?
Yes, you can overblight.
So if I have a 1/1, I can blight 5 on it?
Right. This card in specific says you can't choose a number greater than the greatest toughness among creatures you control, so that it doesn't work on this card. But often, yes, you can blight 2 onto your 1 toughness creature, and oh no, your creature's gone. That's so unfortunate. Who could have predicted that this would happen?
This is kind of a familiar effect, but it would always in the past have been tied to a creature's power.
Yeah.
But now, like, it's a way to actually capitalize on some of those high toughness creatures or effects that boost your toughness. And you could outright win the game, you know, if you had a high enough toughness creature. So I'm sure people will try to build some combos around this one.
This is one of those cards that, you know, we kind of consider like a plague wind almost in limited, because it only hits your opponent's things. And this is extremely powerful. Like, we've seen this effect before, but the one that comes to my mind is Chandra's Ignition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? But that was indeed power, but this thing can just decimate your opponent.
I'll point out here that if I have a 7 toughness creature, I'm allowed to choose X is 7. I'll blight 7. They went on my 1/1. Oh, that's a shame. I still have my whole 7/7.
Oh, wow.
Oh, you don't have to put it on the one that has your highest
just
toughness.
Right, you just have to blight X.
Wow. Wow, okay.
Oh, it got better.
We all just had that epiphany moment.
All right, well, we have another card here that's adding -1 counters to things, but it's more straightforward removal. Let's take a look at Blight Rot.
Blight Rot is an instant that can put 4 -1/-1 counters on any target creature, killing a smaller one or shrinking a larger one down.
Pretty effective card, especially for limited. What do you think, Kenji?
No, it's going to be great. Like, you can kill something that's smaller. Obviously, it has 4 or less toughness, but you can also shrink bigger things as well if it's just annoying. So it's never truly a dead card as long as your opponent has any number of creatures.
But it's dangerous, right? If you don't actually kill it, they might want those -1/-1 counters for value later on in the game.
Oh, that's true.
It's possible. There are some cards that remove the counters.
Oh yeah, speaking of which, we should talk about some cards that aren't just about putting -1 counters onto stuff, but about taking them off and getting value or payoffs for having put counters onto stuff. And it's a callback to an old card I'm sure you'll recognize. It's Glenalendra Guardian.
Glenalendra Guardian is a 3/4 flyer with flash. It enters with a -1 counter, which can be removed to counter a non-creature spell.
I mean, this is my kind of card for sure. Sorry about the counterspell thing.
Well, don't worry, because it's counter target non-creature spell, so I only play creatures.
You're not going to have any of those.
No, I don't have any.
Okay. I mean, I'm envisioning some kind of flywheel where I am able to counter just every spell that anybody plays because I can just continuously put counters and then take them off.
Right. This is a really cool card shape in that on its face, it is one-time use. You get your creature, you remove the counter, you counter something, you've unlocked a bigger creature for your trouble. But also, if you play it with other cards that put counters on it, all of a sudden you have a whole engine going on.
Yeah, in this case, Blight isn't a negative counter, it's a positive thing.
Ban Kenji.
Let's move on to a couple more cards that are sort of playing around in taking counters off and giving you benefit.
Brambleback Brute is a giant who lets you remove its -1 counters to prevent your opponent's creatures from blocking. Then there's Reaping Willow. It also enters with 2 -1 counters, which can be removed to reanimate a creature and leave you with a powerful 3/6 lifelinker.
Visa cards are awesome. First of all, the high toughness on them is going to allow you so much range throughout the game to put -1/-1 counters on these creatures and take them off for value. Second of all, Reaping Willow's art is probably the most metal, awesome art I've seen on a Magic card in quite some time.
So these are both in the same vein as that Glenalendra Guardian card shape. Reaping Willow in particular is one of my favorite cards to play in Limited in this set. It is just so much fun to kind of get your engine going and keep recurring your creatures.
Strategically deep here because that dynamic of you're strengthening your creatures when you remove the counters. So do you want to just do that right away at the first opportunity, or do you want to save it so that you strategically have like a charge on that can't block ability? It's going to make for like really tough judgment calls, I think, when you play.
The Brute is so sweet in an aggressive deck too, because after you've taken those counters off, you're doing 2 things that you want to do, right? You're making sure their creatures can't block, and now you have a 4/5 that you paid 3 mana for.
Exactly.
You also get to really feel the value of keywords with these cards. A 1/4 lifelink creature, you're not too worried about. A 3/6 lifelink creature all of a sudden is a huge deal.
We should mention Hybrid Mana's back.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
was something that was memorable for me in Shadowmoor. White and black, like not a traditionally supported color combination on this plane.
The nice thing is, you don't have to put Reaping Willow in a black-white deck, right? You could be mono-white and still play that card. Or you can play it in maybe like a white-green deck, but it's going to be a little bit harder to cast for that benefit.
Hybrid Mana, as Reid mentioned, is back, and that's going to lead right into our next card. Good segue, pal. You want to take the host seat? Anytime.
I'm
You
a
can.
pro.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, as long as you win a Pro Tour.
He's got a way better chance of becoming a host than I do of winning a Pro Tour. The bars are a little different. Thanks, Maria. Okay, they're doing some very interesting things with the Hybrid Mana in this set, and actually we have another Mythic Rare to show off that kind of demonstrates that. Let's take a look at Catharsis.
Catharsis is a hybrid cost elemental with Evoke. If you spend white mana to cast it, you'll get a couple of Kithkin tokens. If you spend red, you'll give haste and pump up your board. And it's even possible to get both effects when its full cost is paid.
Catharsis is so resonant with the original Lorwyn. So we have Hybrid Mana, we have Evoke, we have the colored mana symbols mattering, and this is reminiscent of like that really iconic cycle of 6 mana elementals, Guile, Hostility from the original Lorwyn.
Yeah, Evoke Elementals have a real pedigree in Magic at this point. The Modern Horizons 2 cycle, Muldrifter, just all sorts of ones you can point at. The new space we're playing with this time, the modality on the Evoke choice. You can get the red effect or the white effect depending on how you spend the mana, so just a lot of options for the cheat mode.
Kenji, do you think you would play this in a monocolored deck, or do you have to be in both colors colors?
You don't need to be in both colors. It helps a lot. That adds a ton of value, of course. You probably don't want to play it in just a red deck. That ability is not really good enough. I would play this if I was just playing white, though. You get a couple of 1/1s, or you get a body with a couple of 1/1s. That's good value.
Yeah, let's do the math here. I have 6 mana. I'm casting this. I've got 2 white and 2 red. I'm all set. So I'm going to get my 2 1/1s onto the battlefield, then resolve. All my stuff gets +1/+1 in haste. I have 8 haste power for 6 mana.
Sick. Yeah, get slugged.
All right, well, Hybrid Mana also synergizes with one of the new mechanics in the set. It's called Vivid, and it cares about the number of colors among permanents you control. So for our next preview, let's talk about a new card that has the Vivid mechanic. It's called Prismatic Undercurrents.
Prismatic Undercurrents rewards you for having a colorful board, letting you search up basic lands when it enters, then giving you extra land drops for the rest of the game.
I mean, whenever you hear prismatic in a card name, you know it's just going to have something to do with multiple colors, and this one's no different. You really want to have access, though, to a few different types of permanents, maybe hybrid creatures.
Yeah, Catharsis is 2 different colors.
That's right, and then, of course, the Prismatic Undercurrents itself is also green, so baseline, unless they killed it in response, you can always, get 1 permanent out of the deal, but this one's going to be a fun build-around for Limited.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Vivid is that if I have a white-green deck and I have a white-black hybrid card and a green-red hybrid card, I have 4 colors without having access to any mana besides white or green, potentially.
Reid, how many basic lands do you think you need to get off of this card to feel satisfied with the value?
At 3, this is a unique, powerful effect. It is going to be deck dependent because for some decks, you get to 4 mana, you're kind of done. You don't care about ramping to 5, 6, 7. But like most of the decks Kenji is going to build, you're going to be thrilled to just keep hitting those land drops late into the game, and this can be really cool.
Okay, and here to help with this whole Vivid mechanic, there's a cycle of Hybrid Mana cards that also plays in to the typal synergies in this set. Let's take a look at that cycle right now.
Each of the core 5 Lorwyn creature types is represented in the Eclipse cycle. These 2-color hybrid creatures all have enters triggers that let you dig for a land or a card with their creature type.
This is sweet, but I want to ask Kenji, how many times are you going to miss on this?
Hopefully not very often if you're putting this in your deck. Ideally, you're running the 2 colors of the typal strategy. In draft, that's going to be a lot easier to pull off.
I mean, I love cards like this because if you keep a land light hand, but you have one of these, you feel pretty confident I'm going to continue to hit my land drops and progress in this game. And if you have plenty of lands, then you're like, oh, I'm looking for the creature off of this, and it'll give you that.
And I love the special version art of these cards, too. I have to point out the Eclipsed Miro, who definitely is the embodiment of in her lane, moisturized and thriving.
So obviously creature types are very important to this set. It's something we associate pretty heavily with Lorwyn and Shadowmoor. There's another mechanic called Kindred that ties into all of this. Let's take a look at Tristan's Command.
Tristan's Command is a kindred elf sorcery that lets you choose 2 effects from among 4 possible options. You can copy an elf, return permanent cards from the graveyard, destroy a creature or enchantment, or pump and untap your entire board.
This command cycle for the 5 premier creature types are one of the ways that we were exploring giving typal strategies something other than creatures to play. That's kind of a problem that typal strategies have. It can be challenging to include non-creatures in the deck. So with Tristan's Command, it works with a lot of your elf cards, and then you get some of those spell effects that your deck really wants that you might not have had access to with just creatures.
Commands are perfect for that too because of the built-in versatility. You can get this off of your Eclipsed Elf.
Oh yeah, you can find this off of Eclipsed Elves. This is awesome.
There's lots of spooky elves, I feel like, that if you make a copy of them are really, really threatening on the board too. And I'm kind of noticing a sort of a sub-theme here, perhaps in this format, of recursion from the graveyard involving elves, which I think is very cool.
Now, Reid, 6 mana is kind of a lot for a sorcery. Do you think this has constructed playability? You think it's viable?
I think it's viable because of those last 2 words in the text box where you get to untap your creatures. If you told me I have to make 6 land drops and cast this, on turn 6 in like a ramp deck, I don't think so. But given that elves are so good at generating mana already, and it plays really well with the Llanowar elves, the Elvish Archdruid type stuff that you're likely to be doing, I think it's perfect.
Now, this next mechanic, we saw it recently in Tarkir Dragonstorm. It's called Behold, but they're using it in this set to sort of be a throwback to classic Lorwyn mechanics. Let's take a look at Champion of the Path.
Champion of the Path is a powerful 4-drop that burns your opponents as elementals enter. To cast it, you need to behold and exile an elemental card, which you'll get back if the champion dies.
The Lorwyn Eclipsed champions are another of these typal cycles aimed at filling a specific role in the typal strategies. In this case, just being a bigger, heftier creature with more impact than a lot of the more small ball creatures you'll play because you want to get a ton of the type. These can be really powerful payoffs by requiring that additional cost to play them.
Yeah, these type of cards are so cool and limited too. You open them up and you're like, okay, I want to build around this.
Yeah, and it reminds me of Champion in the original Lorwyn set, where here they're using Behold plus Exile, the card that you behold, as a replacement for Champion. And importantly, this is part of the cost of casting the spell rather than being a triggered ability upon the creature entering.
It's harder for you to get blown out, right?
Yeah, harder for you to get blown out because they can't kill your only elemental on the battlefield in response to you casting.
And also being able to exile something from your hand, like how much does that change the calculus?
A lot, because it means you don't necessarily have to invest mana twice in order to get this one powerful permanent on the battlefield. So you can exile something from your hand that you haven't had to spend mana on, and then if your champion dies, which they're probably going to have to kill it if they want to stay in the game, you'll get the spell back to your hand for a second shot at it.
All right, and we've got another card that uses Behold in an interesting way. It's time to preview Silvergill Mentor.
Silvergill Mentor is a merfolk that brings along a token friend, and is cheaper to cast if you can behold a merfolk.
This is obviously a callback to Silvergill Adept.
Right, one of the most famous merfolk of all time. Make a token instead of drawing a card, both going to be very valuable for your typal strategy.
This one doesn't have the exile clause. This is just show them a card from your hand, or I guess look at it on the battlefield.
I just love it. Behold my merfolk. What do you think?
Behold is an interesting design tool because it lets us reward deck building and having a sufficient quantity of merfolk in a game state agnostic way. You didn't have to do anything special. They can still be in your hand. If the game hasn't been going well for you, you're not being punished.
And typal, of course, being something that we're focusing on here in Lorwyn. What does a type want? More of its type. And this merfolk comes along with a buddy.
Yeah, and the nice thing is maybe you missed on your Adept. You know, you can still play this later on for 4 mana. And it's not great, but it's a decent enough body. It's even better, of course, if you can behold.
Okay, so we've looked at mechanics that care about creature types, but now let's check out what each of these creature types actually wants to do. I think we should start with the goblins, the Boggarts. Let's look at Boggart Cursecrafter.
Boggart Cursecrafter is a 2-mana 2/3 with Death Touch that turns your goblins' deaths into pain for your opponents.
We've come a long way. It's a 2-mana 2/3 Death Touch with upside.
Yeah, you don't even need any other goblins. It's just good by itself.
But if you have a lot of goblins,
obviously it helps.
This one, goblins, exactly what it says on the tin. The goblins are a sacrifice deck that care about their creatures going to the graveyard and getting rewarded for it.
Well, and goblin decks are often pretty aggro. The problem with aggro strategies, right, is they stabilize. And this gets you to a point of no return where I was like, well, they can't take the damage and they can't really block it because they'll kill it and then they'll still take damage and die.
Playing goblins is all about making your opponents have terrible decisions no matter what they choose.
I felt that when I was playing against Jadine's goblin deck earlier, where it felt like if I cast a removal spell, I was doing you a favor because you wanted your stuff to die, you were bringing it back from the graveyard.
All right, well, speaking of goblins, here's Scuzzback Scrounger.
What'd you call me?
Scuzzback Scrounger is a 2-mana goblin that lets you make a treasure every turn, as long as you're willing to blight one of your own creatures.
Well, first of all, this goblin can kill other goblins, which we already have established goblins want to die anyway. And you're also making treasure tokens, which if you're playing an aggressive goblin deck, is able to help you get a mana advantage, which you don't always have access to early in the game.
There's tension with cards like this because if you just look at the card at face value, the first thing that's going to happen is you put a -1/-1 counter, make it a 2/1 and get a treasure. Now, if you do that again next turn, your creature's dead, but of course you can start hypothetically blighting onto your other creatures. So from the opponent's perspective, it's like, well, do I want to try to wait it out? You already got your one treasure, maybe that's it. Always a tough gameplay decision that you're faced with.
Nice thing too is it's a May ability as well, so if you're the person playing it, you don't have to do it.
Imagine pairing this with that Glenelendra Guardian. It gives you the ability to put a counter on it every turn.
Which brings up a good general point about the world of Lorwyn when it comes to creative deck building, limited play, whatever. It's you don't have to go on the rails of, oh, I'm playing goblins, I'm gonna pick every card that says goblin on it. You can look for those like cross-type synergies. You can play the generically good cards, tie it all together with changelings. There's just so much you can do.
All right, well, let's move to another very famous and clearly one of Reid's favorite creature types, elves.
Absolutely.
We're gonna start off with Twilight Diviner.
Twilight Diviner is an elf that surveils when it enters. Then, when you bring creatures back from the graveyard, it lets you copy one for free.
The art on this card is absolutely stunning. Both the Fable showcase frame and the original are so beautiful.
So the elf strategy, as we talked about before, is about filling the graveyard. And one of the things you might want to do after filling your graveyard is bring things back from the graveyard. And this card pays you off in a huge way for doing that.
Pairs beautifully with the Reaping Willow that we saw earlier.
I have to imagine this has some constructed applications more than draft. I mean, obviously, if you draft it, you're going to want to build around it because there's going to be that graveyard synergy with the elves. But it seems like something that you could do in 60 or 100 plus card decks.
Right, this is a really open-ended build around. You can play it and try to reanimate a bunch of small stuff, or I can be like, okay, what am I gonna do at 6-7 mana that I want 2 copies of?
Nice.
Okay, next elf, Morkant's Loyalist.
Morkant's Loyalist is a green and black elf lord who pumps your board and then returns another elf from the graveyard to your hand on death.
Relatively simple typo lord, limited payoff here, boost all your team, and then reward you for filling up your graveyard. You'll have a lot of selection for that recursion ability.
Perfect too, because if you go wide and you play a creature lord, what's the risk there? Either they're gonna target your lord with a removal spell or they're gonna sweep the board, and Morkant's Loyalist defends you against either of those eventualities. It seems like if you have 2 copies, because it's not legendary, they would kind of protect each other, like they Day of Judgment. You get to return both to your hand, rebuild right
if they
away.
both died, they could target the other, and then that's cool.
Yeah, it's uncommon, so it's something you're going to pull off in limited at least once or twice if you play, And
You play 200 drafts, you'll see that happen.
I have a good friend who's a big fan of the next creature type. Actually, there are many Magic the Gathering players who like Marrow. It's time to preview Encumbered Reejerey.
Encumbered Reejerey is a 5/4 merfolk for only 2 mana. It enters with 3 -1/-1 counters, but loses 1 each time it becomes tapped.
So Kenji, you cast this against me when we were playing earlier, and it was great. How did it feel?
Felt good. I mean, I didn't have any -1/-1 synergies. I just had some, nice aggressive 2-drop.
I mean, an aggressive deck, like if you get the first attack hit, you're kind of good. You're kind of rolling.
Right, once you get all the counters off here, you're talking about a 2-mana 5/4, which is like Tarmogoyf levels of overstated.
Yes, and we've already seen, too, how you can use -1/-1 counters to your benefit. So this card just kind of does it all.
And Merfolk becoming tapped is kind of a throwback to original Lorwyn, right?
So the merfolk care about either becoming tapped or controlling tapped creatures, plays well with attacking, but also Convoke is in the set, so that's a fun way to tap your creature outside of combat.
All right, well, that's not all. We've got another Merfolk to preview here. It is Champions of the Shoal.
Champions of the Shoal can tap and stun down an opponent's creature whenever it enters or becomes tapped. But to cast it, you'll need to behold and exile another Merfolk.
No, I'm a big fan of this card. This thing just does a ton. Sorry, it was just too easy. It was too easy. No, big fan of this card though, and you can tap your own creatures too. Like, yeah, you'll have to put stun counters on them, but we were talking about, the merfolk care about being tapped. Is it enough value to tap maybe 1 value creature and put a stun counter on it?
Yeah, enters or becomes tapped is a pretty irregular trigger construction. You more commonly see enters or attacks, which we call Titan triggers, and they're kind of shorthand for do this once each turn. But the really interesting thing about enters or becomes tapped is that you could theoretically get this trigger twice the turn you play it if you then tap it to something else.
I have a question, Reid. Is this card good enough in Modern to make merfolk players annoying again?
Great question. 4 mana is a tall order, but this card is really, really strong. And one thing that occurs to me is the Behold and Exile it is an additional cost. But if you get into play, say, by Ether Vial or Phantasmal Image, copying it, something like that, like you can bypass that and just get the full value right away.
So goblins, elves, merfolk, we see them on a lot of different planes, but there are some creature types that are unique to Lorwyn, like the Kithkin. So let's show off Kinscare Sentry.
Kinscare Sentry is a Kithkin with first strike and lifelink that wants you to go wide. And when it attacks, you can cheat out a creature from your hand straight into combat.
Okay, all right.
Yes! Wow, as an aggressive player, I love this card. 2 mana, first strike, lifelink for a 2/2. I'm already sold. I don't need to see the rest of the text. But turns out the rest of the text is also great.
What I look for in terms of playing a creature typal deck in competitive constructed is I want it to be multi-dimensional. Not just, okay, I'm gonna play some creatures and you played a blocker and that was it. Kithkin, I think, has that risk where like you're kind of doing one thing, which is building out a big wide board. But some of the cards that I've seen so far give me hope, right? There's a Johnny that you could put in a Kithkin deck to add, non-creature threat. There's Eclipsed Kithkin, which replaces itself. A card like this, the risk is like, okay, you use the ability once and then you're kind of gassed out. You don't have anything left in your hand anyway. But if you can keep the cards flowing and keep a stacked hand, could work really well.
That's a nice throwback too. It's a 2/2 first strike lifelink, if you remember OG Lorwyn that had the Knight of Meadowgrain in, right? And that was like one of the best 2-drops in the format. This one has an extra, very good ability stapled on, but it's still a nice callback.
All right, so we've seen a lot of the different types, and from what we've seen so far, Kenji, what's looking good to you in draft? What creature type do you think you're going to be prioritizing?
I'm hoping to draft the Elamero, Kithkin,
Vivid?
Goblin deck.
Good answer.
Yeah.
All right, we're not quite done yet. We have a few cards left to go. Some really cool stuff, including that exciting Mythic Rare I talked about at the very start. Let's take a look here at Endblaze Epiphany.
Endblaze Epiphany is a versatile removal spell that lets you dig through your deck when the creature it targets dies.
This would be a great card to hit Champion of the Path, that 7/3 we saw earlier.
Right, spend 4 mana, kill the thing, look at 7 cards from the top of your library.
Wow, because it counts the creature's power, not what X is.
Oh, so if you had a 6/1, you could look at 6 for 2 mana? That's really cool.
Yeah, another cool thing here is that this card does not have to kill the thing that you are trying to kill. It just sets up that condition for the rest of the turn. So I can spend X is 0, 1 total mana, say when your thing dies this turn, maybe it dies in combat because I was about to block it, maybe I use a different, cheaper removal spell, and then I get to look at all those cards because all it cares about is the power.
It goes with Evoke, evoke my Catharsis.
Yeah, in response to the Evoke trigger. Oh, that's sweet.
Should note, the exiling cards is mandatory. So if you kill too big of a creature, 40 card format, you can get yourself in a little bit of trouble.
I'm willing to go out that way, Reid.
Yeah. Go out for place of glory.
That's what we call a moral victory. All right, the next one is really cool. It's the only card in the whole set that has the Shadowmoor mechanic Conspire, and it's called Raiding Schemes.
With Raiding Schemes, your non-creature spells gain Conspire, which means you can double them up by tapping 2 creatures that share their colors.
I do like that it has the restriction of making players who are spellcasters have at least 2 creatures in their deck.
Well, you just draft a bunch of non-creature cards that make creatures, and then they kind of chain a little bit going.
This is what I think of as like 10th plus draft content. It is not exactly on the beaten path, but it is something really cool to explore once you have your legs under you in the format.
10th? You mean first draft content?
All right, we've got 2 more cards to go, and the next one has a pretty high upside if you can set things up, and also a very cool name. It is Spry and Mighty.
Spry and Mighty is a sorcery that rewards you for having creatures of different sizes. The greater the difference, the more cards you'll draw, and the bigger those creatures will become.
What jumps off the page is using Green's Mana Dorks, Llanowar Elves, Birds of Paradise, whatever it might be, to accelerate out your big creature, and then sort of by the structure of your deck, you're already going to have that large differential in powers.
So we keep talking about the ways that having -1/-1 counters on your creature could be used to your advantage. And I actually had to double check this one with the rules team before I said it confidently on the show here. Magic handles negative powers. So imagine having an 0/4 creature with 3 -1/-1 counters on it. You now have a -3 creature in play. If you also had a 3-power creature, that difference is 6.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
okay.
So it works even better with Blight.
Yeah.
I've been waiting a long time for the negative power to ever matter.
That's sick. I didn't
go.
think about that.
So it's very cool that this is something where it does.
I have to ask, Reid, did you like being the model for the Fable storybook version?
Am I the tree? Or I'm the little guy? Yeah. I think I have that sword at home.
All right, we are down to our last card, and I teased it at the very start of the video. It seems like it's got a good chance of seeing 1v1 constructed play based on the fact that it has an impressive stat line for only 1 mana. Let's look at Moonshadow.
Moonshadow is a menacing 7/7 for only 1 mana, but it enters with 6 -1/-1 counters. However, these counters are removed whenever a permanent card goes to your graveyard.
Moonshadow, more like Death Shadow. That's exactly what I think of when I see this card. The only difference is you can actually run this out on turn 1 and I'm absolutely terrified of it. I feel like we're definitely going to see it in some kind of constructed format somewhere.
1/1 Menace at its base, okay, that's not very exciting, but it does not take very much to turn it into a relevant card.
Yeah, because just a couple creatures happen to die, and it's going to naturally grow. And for 1 mana, even if it just ends up being a 3/3 menace, are you happy with that?
Oh, absolutely.
I think you're happy at 2/2 menace.
Yeah,
For 1
sure,
mana, that's plenty
for
good.
sure, yeah.
It's another one of these cards that makes any decision your opponent makes bad, right? As well, sending your creatures to the graveyard are going to grow this creature in response.
Yeah, so what do you think, Reid? Do you think somebody's going to, you or somebody else, maybe figure out how to break this in Constructed?
I'll start working on it. For me, this is what Magic's about, where you see a card and it just makes you think in terms of creative deck building, so many things you can do with this one. You know, you could play it sort of straight up where you cast it early and then through the course of a normal game of Magic, you get to remove some counters here and there. But then you can also think about like, how am I gonna turbo remove the counters? You can think about, well, boy, this is a 7/7 for 1 mana in zones other than the battlefield. So am I doing scavenge or something like that? You know, there's no right or wrong answer to these things. It's just like, what are you gonna do with your Moon Shadow?
All right, thank you so much for joining us for this Lorwyn Eclipsed preview video. Thank you to my fellow guests for saying such smart things about Magic cards. Jadine, you blew my mind a couple of times in the last hour. That's not easy to do. If you want to check out the other cards that have been previewed from the set in earlier videos, those links will be in the show notes. And of course, the Loading Ready Run pre-release is happening very soon. And we here at the Command Zone are also going to do a live stream draft that you should also check out. We'll be previewing even more cards during that. With that, we will say goodbye. We'll see you on the battlefield.
Lorwyn Eclipsed. In stores, January 23rd.